You know what? Why don't you give us a little bit of your background? Like, how did you even get into this stuff? Where did you get your start into this kind of thing?
Well, I mean, I grew up in the '90s, I say, with you know unsolved mysteries. We had
Ah, X
Flight of the
Files.
X Files, Flight of the Navigator, Men in Black,
Mm-hmm.
Independence Day. Um, what was that movie with the bots that could reproduce themselves? They were like self-replicating androids. It was called
Ah,
Batteries Not Included.
I never saw that
Uh,
one.
that was another one. I don't know. There was all these cool videos, in the '90s and stuff, and then I read books on like on the Chariot of the Gods on ancient. That was like the one that was the basis of Ancient Aliens, which became that big TV series for like the past 20
Aliens.
years. Yeah, so there's all
Aliens.
that's we've been surrounded with it, and of course Bob Lazar on
Bob
Unsolved
Lazar. I see
Mysteries and
chat's trying
stuff.
to ask him about Bob Lazar.
Right. So Bob Lazar definitely got me into it. Wanted me. I was like, and then when I read a book called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, which was about Richard Feynman, who is a
Okay.
PhD physicist. He won the Nobel Prize for quantum electrodynamics, and he was recruited like at age 18 to go work on the Manhattan Project out at Los Alamos, and really brilliant guy, and started my fascination with physics and with top secret research programs because like this guy said this guy Bob Lazar was on TV saying that he worked on alien spacecraft and
Yeah.
that there's real programs in the government that do this kind of stuff. So
And you're like, let me
certainly
at
that got
it.
me a little
Let me get a
friggin'
piece of
interest.
that.
Not now it's like mainstream, everybody knows about this and stuff, but back in like the '90s it was like we thought it was like this big top secret thing, and
Yeah.
I was hooked, man, and I don't know. Some people like cars and girls. I like cars and girls, but this was just my thing. It just sucked me in. It was what I would do with all my time, and they had to learn as much physics as possible, as especially stuff that was anything connected to classified programs, like going back to Project Rainbow, which was the CIA's operation out at Area 51, where they were doing radar that started all their invisibility and stealth and cloaking stuff. Um,
Cool.
it was like this was this doing all the research on the history of the start of radar, how like Tesla had so many of these patents and ideas. He made a remote control boat at the 1893 World's Fair.
Tesla
Really,
did
Tesla
a
had
remote
remote control.
control
Yeah,
boat.
it was remotely controlled, and he had it
Whoa.
all. He had all the things figured out for it, and it could remotely control this electric boat with a remote control, and it was at the 1893 World's Fair. So Tesla had a lot of this stuff figured out decades ahead of the rest of the world, and he was going to meetings with the military and telling them about, hey, I have this thing, we can see ships, we can use this stuff called radar, and we send these waves out and they bounce back, and we can tell where the ships are with it. And they're like, this guy's fucking nuts, this
please
guy's
don't
crazy.
swear
Oh,
if you
sorry.
don't mind. Sorry everyone. That's okay. So don't no worries. Just moving forward. But it does drive your point home though that they
It
thought he was
drives it home
crazy.
that they thought he was bat
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
guano.
He was
So,
crazy.
so that's
Simply
the
put.
idea. It's a lot of what is it? Arthur C. Clarke said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic,
From
and
Magic, yep.
that's pretty much the way I look at it, and that's the way I kind of felt. That's the way I felt because I've been sort of talking about this kind of stuff and talking about the research, researching this stuff in detail for the past since like 2004 is when I five about was when I really got into it like hardcore.
And
And
what changed then in 2004, 2005?
I I moved to Boston, and I was living in Revere at the time and working in up in Cambridge and Watertown actually. And I met a group of individuals from a local they were local activists, and they gave me some literature and some DVDs and stuff, and I started getting into conspiracies because I read a book called Behold a Pale Horse. That was like one of the books that started me into it, and it started me down the JFK rabbit hole and into like RFK and the CIA, and reading. So I started reading all kinds of books about the CIA, like Philip Agee's CIA Diary. Started studying, spycraft, the history of all these operations and stuff, and reading a lot of Noam Chomsky, his earlier stuff, exposing a lot of CIA stuff, and and a lot of these other guys like Mike Rupert, Michael C. Rupert, Terry Reed, a number of like the list could go on. Then I started reading like Russ Baker's work on Family of Secrets, and I was reading a lot of like deep state conspiracy kind of stuff. And then but there was some of that alien stuff in there, but I'd kind of like discredited or wrote aliens off a lot, because I was also going to school to study physics at the same time,
Okay.
and learning a lot of science that was like, and a lot of the scientists, a lot of my teachers were like really, against UFOs and like in some of these other ideas and stuff too. Even cold fusion, when I first brought it up to my professor, like, that's pseudoscience, right? And then I ended up going to investigate it more because I was like, oh, MIT is putting on, in 2014, MIT put on a cold fusion IAP course where it was like like early January before classes start, they have this week of free downtime. And so they host open to the course, fun classes for the faculty that the faculty can host. So it's a week-long class. And there was a week-long class put on by Dr. Peter Hagelstein and Dr. Mitchell Schwartz on cold fusion. And so I went up to MIT and I filmed it and I put it on the internet and started reporting on this and getting interested in cold fusion research that was being done, because I'm like, wow, MIT, I thought MIT debunked cold fusion, and then like,
Yeah.
why are this? So there's different people, obviously, that some people kept the light alive and we're looking still for it, 20 years later, here we are. And then they had a colloquium conference there over the summer, and where they invited people from all over the world to present at this week, like really long conference with lots of speakers in a big hall. The first hall that they put us in for the conference was actually too small. They didn't think this many people would show up, but they actually moved us to a bigger conference hall at the campus at MIT, and so I filmed a bunch of that stuff and put that up online. That was 2014, but I'm skipping ahead quite a bit here because
Yeah.
we went ahead 10 years. So in 2000, probably 2008, I started getting into like anti-gravity research, and started like, well, has there been any kind of like government history of anti-gravity and stuff? And obviously, like, you find that stuff about Biefeld-Brown and lifters, and that even NASA was doing a lot of research into this. Up until recently, there's been research that you can find that they've sort of continued this. The Biefeld-Brown effect is pretty much, we've definitively proved it's ion wind and not anti-gravity. It's not like a coupling between electromagnetism and gravity. It's just basically, you're energizing ions in air and you're forcing them to move and then pushing yourself by like swimming in the ion wind. And so it's useful. You can still make things that fly with it, but it's not real anti-gravity. But it's still useful for a lot of things. And so this was used in actually to break the sound barrier. The nose cone of the X-1, experimental craft that broke the sound barrier that Chuck Yeager flew. The nose cone of it's electrically charged to kind of like it actually creates an ion bow shock. It takes the bow shock off the front nose cone of the craft. So because that's one of the problems with when it goes supersonic is that there's this bow shock that would rip the craft apart, and it starts at the nose cone. And so they energize the nose cone, so it creates this ion barrier, which
Cool.
pushes the wind away ahead of the craft going through. So it dampens the shock on the bow of the craft.
And that was years ago, decades ago.
And that was decades ago. It was like
Wow.
the 50s. So
That's cool.
And it's interesting because then you start going into this, and a lot of this was classified. It's all been declassified in the years since, or unclassified. Some of it was never really classified because a lot of this stuff exists in the scientific literature, but people aren't aware because unless they're studying to be scientists, they're not reading the scientific literature. And even if they did, it probably wouldn't do them any good because it's really hard to get through. It's not easy reading.
Yeah, you got to understand a lot of different facets of all of it to really grasp what it's saying.
It's so deep, but again, some of the best research that I've found in this is in the scientific literature and going through the science, and that takes a lot of time because you got to go through the best way is through the bibliographies, and then tracing down their sources and making sure you understand all the source material going back. Because I've been trying to trace a lot of this stuff back through the programs and the scientists who've worked on it over the years. And I've come up with like tables and lists of like all the scientists' names over the years. That like, okay, who? Every time I come across a new name, it goes on this table, and then you years active, the things that they worked on. There's you get what's called their curriculum vitae, and I learned a lot of this stuff by going through because I believed Bob Lazar, and I was trying to like prove, I was, trying to prove that to my professors and show them like, hey, there's these programs that exist, and trying to tell people about this stuff. And I met a lot of military guys that really worked out at Area 51. And I knew a guy that worked. I've actually met a guy because I was talking so much about Area 51 and all these secret programs. I met people from there that were like, hey, listen, you're a smart kid. Let me take you under my wing and show you some stuff and really teach you some stuff. So, the Roadrunners guys, those guys, like, is a whole organization of people that like we used to work. They're Area 51 veterans, and they know there's certain stuff they're allowed to talk about now because it's declassified. And it's really cool as this stuff gets older, and we're going into the future. A lot of this stuff is becoming declassified, so we're in an interesting time period right now where we're learning a lot of the missing pieces of the history and a lot of missing physics, and it's quite interesting. And
Well, there's that executive order too that all classified UFO information has to be declassified in 90 days, which is, I mean, almost done, right? I mean, when it's coming up soon, should like another like month or something, and then the limit comes and they have to declassify everything.
I
It's
laugh at
interesting.
that because they're so busy right
Why?
now with everything going on. They don't have like I've tagged them on Twitter or tried to like call my congressman or talk to. They don't care about this. They don't know anything about this. Not on
Right.
the level that I do. Certainly they would. I could technically debrief them or brief them. In fact, I heard that one of the members of Senator Marco Rubio. Don't quote me on this, but I heard a rumor that Senator Marco Rubio, who started that whole, he's the head of that Senate Intelligence Select Committee
Okay.
on that UAP thing. I
Mm.
heard that he had an aide that was watching our conferences to
Really?
learn about this
Your
stuff.
stuff.
Right, because what we
Cool.
did, what we did, right?
No, what did
Like,
you do? Tell us about it.
so we went and got like I've been like trying to research the history of this stuff, so I know a lot about it, right? So
Yeah.
I go back to these conferences. Like, you go back to DARPA, and DARPA, all the programs that get. How do these programs come in? Where do these SAPs come from, right? So SAP is a special access program.
Okay.
It has its own classification, and its own it's above top secret. It's what they call above top secret. It's a special access program. It means that you even if you have an above top secret security clearance, you still can't access this unless you have special access.
I see.
Because it's a special access
So
program.
it's beyond classified.
So it's like the beyond classified stuff. It's the
Yeah.
real deal. And so a lot of these programs, there's science. Obviously, you have to go with what scientists are doing in real science, because this isn't freaking. I mean, this isn't freaking. This isn't a laboratory in a Marvel Comics book. This is the real life here we're talking about. We're talking
Yeah.
about real organizations and the way that things really work. It's not like a Hulk comic. So it's what they have is these conferences. One of them was called STAFE 2. And one of them was called the Estes Park Conference. And those were the two main propulsion conferences where all the scientists would meet and go and present their new scientists would come and present ideas at these conferences. And there's always a DARPA guy in the conference waiting for, the recruiter to say, all right, this is a person that we want to take. So this is like where they're recruiting out of. So if you want to get recruited and you're a person that wants to get recruited into these kinds of secret programs, you have to go to school, become a scientist, and start, researching the types of topics that we talk about, and then go to these conferences and present new ideas so that you can get recruited, because that's where they recruit from. And
Can I ask you? Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Did you get recruited?
I
Have you,
haven't been recruited yet. I don't
are
think
you
I'm
like
smart
bummed
enough
about
or
that? Are
something.
you a little sore? Like
I
they
think I'm
never.
too public for that. You know
Is
what
that
I
what it
mean?
is? You're too
I don't
public?
know. It's like they want people. The thing is, they want people that are their noses in the books and not in a microphone on a podcast and talking about and blabbing about this stuff on the
Yeah.
internet. You know, they
Right,
want
right,
people
right.
that are really just subject matter experts, and you know, because there's nerds out there that are just so absorbed in their work that they're not interested in talking about it, and they don't really they're antisocial anyway, so they don't like talking to people. So it's perfect, and those are the kind of people they tend to recruit more, I
Hmm.
would say, and and of course, it took me a number of years. I dropped out of college and then went back and then changed my major and then dropped out again and then went back and changed my major back to physics and then finally finished in 2012. Um, you know,
Way to finish it up. Way to finish it.
but you know, it just so happened that I was so caught up and so distracted with all this other research, and I was learning so much more just doing research on the internet that I was just, I don't know, it's hard to keep track, keep focus and
Yeah.
stuff. But I eventually got through it.